Each was given a separate classroom with desks covered with mats serving as resting tables. Antonio thought he caught a glimpse of Felix waving to him from a crowd at the far end of the corridor. He waved back just in case it had been him. The fighters changed from their street clothes into fighting gear. Antonio wore white trunks, black socks, and black shoes. Felix wore sky blue trunks, red socks, and white boxing shoes. They had dressing gowns to match their fighting trunks, with their names neatly stitched on the back. The loudspeakers blared into the open windows of the school. There were speeches by dignitaries, community leaders, and great boxers of yesteryear. Some were well prepared, some improvised on the spot. They all carried the same message of great pleasure and honor at being part of such a historic event. This great day was in the tradition of champions emerging from the streets of the Lower East Side. Interwoven with the speeches were the sounds of other boxing events. After the sixth bout, Felix was much relieved when his trainer, Charlie, said, "Time change, quick knockout. This is it, we're on." Waiting time was over. Felix was escorted from the classroom by a dozen fans in white t-shirts with the word Felix across their fronts. Antonio was escorted down a different stairwell and guided through a roped-off path. As the two climbed into the ring, the crowd exploded with a roar. Antonio and Felix both bowed gracefully, then raised their arms in acknowledgement. Antonio tried to be cool, but even as the roar was in its first birth, he turned slowly to meet Felix's eyes, looking directly into his. Felix nodded his head, and Antonio responded. And both, as one, just as quickly turned away to face his own corner. Bong, 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 the roar turned to stillness. "Ladies and gentlemen, senors y senoras," the announcer spoke slowly, pleased at his bilingual efforts. "Now the moment we've all been waiting for, the main event between the two fine young Puerto Rican fighters, products of our Lower East Side." "Loicida," called out a member of the audience. "In this corner, weighing 134 pounds, Felix Vargas. In this corner, weighing 133 pounds, Antonio Cruz. The winner will represent the boys' club in the Tournament of Champions, the Golden Gloves. There will be no draw. May the best man win." The cheering of the crowd shook the window panes of the old building surrounding Tompkins Square Park. At the center of the ring, the referee was giving instructions to the youngsters. "Keep your punches up. No low blows. No punching in the back of the head. Keep your heads up. Understand? Let's have a clean fight. Now shake hands and come out fighting." Both youngsters touched gloves and nodded. They turned and danced quickly to their corners. Their head towels and dressing gowns were lifted neatly from their shoulders by their trainer's nimble fingers. Antonio crossed himself. Felix did the same. Bong bong, round one. Felix and Antonio turned and faced each other squarely in a fighting pose. Felix wasted no time. He came in fast, head low, half hunched toward his right shoulder, and lashed out with a straight left. He missed a right cross as Antonio slipped a punch and countered with a 1-2-3 left that slapped Felix's head back, sending a mild shot coursing through him. If Felix had any small doubt about their friendship affecting their fight, it would have been neatly dispelled. Antonio danced, a joy to behold. His left hand was like a piston, pumping jabs one right after the other with seeming ease. Felix bobbed and weaved and never stopped boring in. He knew that the long reach was his disadvantage. Antonio had too much reach on him. Only by coming in close could Felix hope to achieve the dream of knockout. Antonio knew the dynamite that was stored in his Amigo brother's fist. He ducked a short right and missed a left hook. Felix trapped him against the ropes just long enough to pour some punishing rights and lefts to Antonio's hard midsection. Antonio slipped away from Phoenix, crashing two lefts to his head, which set Felix's right ear to ringing. Bong! Both amigos froze, a punch well on its way, sending up a roar of approval for good sportsmanship. Felix walked briskly back to his corner. His right ear had not stopped ringing. Antonio gracefully danced his way toward his stool, none the worse, except for a glowing glove burns showing angry red against the whiteness of his midribs. "Watch that right, Tony," his trainer talked into his ear. "Remember, Felix always goes to the body. He'll want you to drop your hands for his overhead left or right. Got it?" Antonio nodded, spraying water out between his teeth. He felt better as his sore midsection was being firmly rubbed. Felix's corner was also busy. "You gotta get in there, fella." Felix's trainer poured water over his curly afro locks. "Get in there or he's gonna chop you up from way back." Bong bong, round 2. Felix was off his stool and rushed to Antonio like a bull, sending a hard right to his head. Beads of water exploded from Antonio's long hair. Antonio, hurt, sent back a blurring barrage of lefts and rights that only meant pain to Felix, who returned with a short left to the head, followed by a looping right to the body. Antonio countered with his own flurry, forcing Felix to give ground, but not for long. Felix bobbed and weaved, occasionally punching his two gloves together. Antonio waited for the rush that was sure to come. Felix closed in and feinted with his left shoulder and threw a right instead. Light suddenly exploded inside Felix's head as Antonio slipped the blow and hit him with a piston-like left, catching him flush on the point of his chin. Bedlam broke loose as Felix's legs momentarily buckled. He fought off a series of rights and lefts and came back with a strong right that taught Antonio respect. Antonio danced in carefully. He knew Felix had the habit of playing possum when hurt to succor an opponent within reach of the powerful bombs he carried in each fist. A right to the head slowed Antonio's pretty dancing. He answered with a left at Felix's right eye that began puffing up within 3 seconds. Antonio, a bit too eager, moved in too close, and Felix had entangled him in a rip-roaring punch toe-to-toe slugfest that brought the whole Tompkins Square park screaming to its feet. Rights to the body, lefts to the head. Neither fighter was giving an inch. Suddenly, a short right caught Antonio squarely on the chin. His long legs turned to jelly and his arms flailed out desperately. Felix, grunting like a bull, threw wild punches from every direction. Antonio, groggy, bobbed and weaved, evading most of the blows. Suddenly, his head cleared. His left flashed out hard and straight, catching Felix on the bridge of his nose. Felix lashed back with a haymaker right off the ghetto streets. At the same instant, his eye caught another left hook from Antonio. Felix swung out, trying to clear the pain. Only the frenzied screaming of those along the ringside let him know that he had dropped Antonio. Fighting off the growing haze, Antonio struggled to his feet, got up, ducked, and threw a smashing right that dropped Felix flat on his back. Felix got up as fast as he could in his own corner, groggy but still game. He didn't even hear the count. In a fog, he heard the roaring of the crowd, who seemed to have gone insane. His head cleared to hear the bell sound at the end of the round. He was glad. His trainer sat him down on a stool. In his corner, Antonio was doing what all fighters do when they are hurt. They sit and smile.
Can I have someone from 7B come to the office, please? I need someone from 7B to come to the office. Thank you.
They sit and smile at everyone. The referee signaled the ring doctor to check the fighters out. He did so, and he gave them the okay. The cold water sponges brought clarity to both Amigo brothers. They were rubbed until their circulation ran free. Bong, round 3, the final round. Up to now it had been tic-tac-toe, pretty much even. But everyone knew there could be no draw, and that this round would decide the winner. This time, to Felix's surprise, it was Antonio who came out fast, charging across the ring. Felix braced himself, but couldn't ward off the barrage of punches. Antonio drove Felix hard against the ropes. The crowd ate it up. Thus far, the two had fought with mucho corazon. Felix tapped his gloves and commenced his attack anew. Antonio, throwing boxer's cautions to the wind, jumped in to meet him. Both pounded away. Neither gave an inch, and neither fell to the canvas. Felix's left eye was tightly closed. Claret red blood poured from Antonio's nose. They fought toe-to-toe. The sounds of their blows were loud in contrast to the silence of a crowd gone completely mute. The referee was stunned by their savagery. Bong, 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 the bell sounded over and over again. Felix and Antonio were past hearing. Their blows continued to pound on each other like hailstones. Finally, the referee and the two trainers pried Felix and Antonio apart. Cold water was poured over them to bring them back to their senses. They looked around and rushed towards each other. A cry of alarm surged through the Tompkins Square Park. Was this a fight to the death instead of a boxing match? The fear soon gave way to a wave upon wave of cheering as the two amigos embraced. No matter what the decision, they knew they would always be champions to each other. Bong, bong, bong. Ladies and gentlemen, senors and senoras, the winner and representative of the Golden Gloves Tournament of Champions is... The announcer turned to point to the winner and found himself alone. Arm in arm, the champions had already left the ring.